A volcano situated in the Reykjanes Peninsula by the Hagafell Mountain erupts after weeks of seismic activity.
Icelandic police had raised their alert level in the town of Grindavik as a result of the outbreak. More details on this later in the news. Good evening, I am Gianna Llanes.
I am Nina Richielago Flores. This is Mata ng Agila International. Now for the headlines. Philippines announces a shift in diplomatic efforts with China on West Philippine Sea tensions. DOH logs a 50% uptick in COVID-19 cases. Protesters erect a tent city outside Tel Aviv's defense headquarters, pressuring the administration to renegotiate a new hostage deal. A devastating magnitude 6.2 earthquake kills over 100 people in China. And Marvel Studios fires Jonathan Majors after being found guilty of multiple charges. President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. has stated that the Philippines needs a paradigm shift in its approach to China's actions in the West Philippine Sea. According to the president, the current diplomatic efforts with Beijing are proving ineffective and a new strategy is necessary. President Marcos made these remarks over the weekend, emphasizing that China's persistent disregard for traditional diplomatic methods requires a fresh approach. This comes in the wake of an incident on the 10th of December where a Filipino vessel on a resupply mission to Second Thomas Shoal suffered significant engine damage after being targeted by a water cannon from the Chinese Coast Guard. Despite expressing personal dissatisfaction with the perceived hostile behavior of Chinese Ambassador Wang Shilian, President Marcos asserted that the Philippines will not seek to recall the envoy. He explained that the country cannot afford to make mistakes that could lead to significant trouble, acknowledging that Ambassador Wang is merely performing his duties in conveying China's position on the West Philippine Sea dispute.
President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. has raised his concerns of the escalating tensions in the West Philippine Sea. This is in his call to the Philippine government to be cautious with their actions and refrain from overreacting to the reported presence of Chinese vessels in the Yungin Shoal. The president underscored that matter to avoid making mistakes that might misinterpret by other parties. He noted that the country's government are exerting all efforts over the matter. The armed forces of the Philippines previously dismissed that Chinese vessels swarming in the Yungin Shoal were in invasion mode. This is after security analyst Ray Powell earlier described China Coast Guard's behavior as an invasion.
As of the third quarter of 2023, the outstanding foreign debt of borrowers in the Philippines relative to the size of the economy decreased to 28.1%, down from 28.5% in the second quarter. The debt-to-GDP ratio compares what a country owes with what it produces, and this improvement is attributed to faster-than-expected GDP growth in the third quarter. Despite a 0.8% increase in the foreign debt stock from 117.9 billion to 118.8 billion US dollars, the debt-to-GDP ratio improved. The Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas stated that the rise in the debt level was influenced by adjustments in previous periods, including borrowings from earlier quarters. Factors such as foreign exchange revaluation, the sale of Philippine debt paper to residents by non-residents, and net repayments partially offset the increase in the debt stock.
Publicus Asia's year-end survey showed that 45% of Filipinos are upbeat about the country's economic prospects next year. Data shows the study conducted from November 29 to December 4 resulted in a slight improvement in the public viewpoint. In North Central Luzon, optimism scores rose from 43% in the third quarter to 49% in the fourth. South Luzon scored 45% from 40%, while Visayas reached 47% from 41%. Mindanao, however, declined from 50% to 44%. Meanwhile, an uptick was observed in the positive views for the next quarter's economic prospects, with a 10% incline to 67%. This positive trend was recorded across all demographics.
The Department of Transportation, or DOTR, has announced plans to assist operators in addressing concerns over the reported potential 400% increase in jeepney fares due to the Public Utility Vehicle, or PUV, modernization program. This comes in response to a statement from the nonprofit organization Ibon Foundation, which expressed concerns about the privatization and corporatization of the transport sector, potentially leading to a substantial rise in jeepney fares. DOTR Undersecretary Timothy John Batan clarified that the mentioned concerns might be related to Step 2 of the PUV modernization program, where traditional jeepneys are slated to be replaced with modernized ones. He assured that the government has made adjustments to the program to alleviate the financial burden on jeepney operators. Changes include an increase in subsidies and ongoing collaboration with government banks to simplify the process for operators to access affordable financing for the replacement of their units with modernized versions.
President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. has secured fresh investment commitments totaling 14.5 billion pesos during the ASEAN-Japan Commemorative Summit. These commitments were made by 9 companies during a business event organized by the Department of Trade and Industry, held on the sidelines of the summit. The companies expressing their commitment to invest in the Philippines already have existing contracts and plan to expand their operations in the country. President Marcos highlighted that, including these new commitments, the Philippines now boasts a total of 771.6 billion pesos in investment pledges from Japanese companies. Trade officials estimate that these latest commitments could generate around 15,750 job opportunities across various sectors, including infrastructure, electronics, retail, ship manufacturing, and business process outsourcing.
The Department of Health, or DOH, confirmed that COVID-19 infections nationwide rose by 50% from December 12 to 18. Official data show that 7-day average cases rose from 260 to 389, higher than recorded cases from December 5 to 11. Of the 2,725 individuals found positive for the COVID-19 virus, 16 logged as severe or critical condition. As of December 19, the total number of new COVID-19 cases in the Philippines stood at 360. New recoveries stand at 242. The DOH logged 4,898 active new COVID cases nationwide. Health Secretary Ted Herbosa said hospitalizations remained at a safe level, adding that there could be no huge outbreak that will stress the health system. He attributed the decrease in COVID hospitalizations to increased knowledge of treating the virus. Herbosa also advised the public to protect themselves from other respiratory diseases by wearing face masks and staying at home if symptoms are present.
Palestine has expressed its gratitude for the Philippines' vote in favor of the United Nations resolution calling for a ceasefire in Gaza. This is after the 10th emergency special session of the UN General Assembly last December 12. Palestine ambassador to the Philippines, Saleh Mohammed, said in a statement, and I quote, "It is highly appreciated. That's why we are here to actually make better understanding for the Philippine government and for Filipinos in general. We cannot accept for any Filipinos to refer to Palestinians as terrorists." The resolution has called for a ceasefire to stop the loss of life and suffering in the Palestinian enclave. Meanwhile, Philippine Permanent Representative to UN Ambassador Antonio Lagdameo extended the Philippines' stand that a humanitarian ceasefire is crucial in the Gaza Strip. Lagdameo added that the Philippines also underscores adherence to international humanitarian law, especially the principles of proportionality and distinction in response to security threats. Coming up, Japan, South Korea, and the United States fully activated a trilateral real-time system to counter North Korea. The U.S. launches a multinational force to protect trade in the Red Sea. And And the mounting death toll in Gaza has spurred increasing calls for a ceasefire. Stay tuned for more stories around the globe when we return.
One goal, one dream. Road to Storkada. Monday to Friday, 5:30 p.m. to 6 p.m.
Let's get together. Sunday 25. Sunday 25.
Welcome back to Mata ng Agila International. North Korea has officially confirmed that it tested its most powerful solid-fuel intercontinental ballistic missile, the Hwasong-18, with the country's leader Kim Jong-un personally overseeing the launch. Kim emphasized that the missile launch sent a clear signal to what he referred to as hostile forces, stating that it was intended as a warning to the United States. In his own words, the U.S. imperialists and their vassal forces' vicious ambition for confrontation will not abate of its own accord. The Hwasong-18, theoretically capable of reaching any part of the United States, traveled about 1,000 kilometers and reached an altitude of around 6,500 kilometers before landing in the waters west of Japan's Hokkaido region. South Korea, Japan, and the United States condemned the missile test and warned that the use of nuclear weapons by Pyongyang would lead to the end of Kim Jong-un's regime.
South Korea, the United States, and Japan have activated their system to share real-time data on North Korean missiles. This is after Pyongyang conducted the third test launch of its Hwasong-18 intercontinental ballistic missile. Seoul's defense ministry said that the data-sharing system was established to ensure the safety of its citizens through missile detection and evaluation in real time. The data-sharing system came up after a three-way summit hosted by U.S. President Joe Biden at Camp David in August. The system was part of an agreement between the defense chiefs of the three states last month.
Hundreds of people on Sabang Island in Indonesia staged a protest against Rohingya refugees and the agencies providing aid to the minority group. They demonstrated Monday outside a refugee camp. Ralph Coronel reports.
Since the beginning of November, more than 1,500 Rohingya have arrived at coastal communities in the province of Aceh, seeking better lives than they had in Bangladesh. But the people in Indonesia are now rejecting them. The protesters want all of the refugees removed from Sabang Island and the agencies helping them to leave as well. They say people are struggling to survive without the added burden of newcomers. And they add they don't want the refugees causing trouble and becoming a bad influence to local children. Indonesian President Joko Widodo blames a surge in human trafficking for the increase in Rohingya landings. Police have arrested 4 alleged human traffickers in the past 2 weeks. Ralph Cornell from Mata ng Agila International, trusted, connected, on point.
The European Union, or EU, has unveiled its 12th sanctions package against Russia. The new restrictions include an import ban on diamonds mined, processed, or manufactured in Russia. The embargo applies to non-industrial, natural, and synthetic diamonds and diamond jewelry from January 1, 2024. The EU expects that Russia's losses from the new ban will amount to 4 billion euros a year.
The Pentagon says unless the United States approves new budget, funds for the Ukraine military aid will run out by December 30 of this year. Pentagon Comptroller Michael McCord confirms that they are spending their last $1.07 billion to buy new weapons and equipment to send to Kyiv. He urged the U.S. Congress to take immediate action and approve the supplemental fund to protect Washington's military readiness. The U.S. Congress is in a deadlock over the more than $60 billion that President Joe Biden has requested for Ukraine. But Republicans insisted the package must include steps to tighten security at the U.S. border with Mexico. Otherwise, they won't approve it.
The United States and Finland signed a defense agreement called the Defense Cooperation Agreement, or DCA. The agreement gives the U.S. access to 15 military bases in NATO's newest member. Ken Cruz tells us more.
During the signing, Secretary of State Antony Blinken says the U.S. now has a network of defense cooperation agreements that stretch from northern to southern Europe, from the Northern Sea to the Black Sea. This, he says, provides security and stability for people all across the continent.
3 ways. Today, NATO is bigger, it's stronger, it is more united than at any point in its nearly 75-year history. And that's
Finnish Defense Minister Antti Hakkanen says signing the DCA is an important milestone in the two countries' bilateral relationship. Hakkanen says it gives them a powerful set of tools to work together in support of NATO's plans. He adds it is a strong sign of U.S. commitment to the defense of Finland and all Northern Europe.
We do not expect the United States to take care of the defense of Finland. We continue to invest in our defense and share the burden in our area and beyond. However, this agreement significantly enhances our ability to act together in all situations in military security defense fields.
On December 6, the U.S. signed a similar pact with Sweden. It gives Washington access to 17 military bases there. Concerns raised by Russia's invasion of Ukraine in February 2022 led both Finland and Sweden to abandon their long-standing military non-alignment. Both applied for membership in the North Atlantic Treaty Organization. Finland joined in April. Sweden, however, is still waiting for its bid to be ratified by NATO members Hungary and Turkey. Ken Cruz from Matandang Agila International, trusted, connected, on point.
Kenya and the European Union have signed an economic partnership agreement, a long-negotiated trade deal aimed at increasing the flow of goods between the two markets.
At the core of this arrangement is our aspiration to put real money into the pockets of ordinary people, farmers, craftsmen and women, fabricators, transporters, various other kinds of workers who contribute to the manufacturing, intercontinental transport, and last-mile delivery to consumers of various products that are a subject of the signing of this agreement today.
This agreement provides Kenya with duty-free and quota-free access to the EU, its largest export market, while European goods will benefit from progressive tariff reductions. The deal represents the first comprehensive trade agreement between the EU and an African nation since 2016. It is part of the EU's effort to strengthen economic ties with Africa, particularly in the face of China's extensive infrastructure investments across the continent. EU President Ursula von der Leyen described the partnership as a mutually beneficial arrangement and encouraged other East African nations to join the pact.
Partnerships like ours are precious. And because they are so precious, in the times we live in, they need to be strengthened. And that's what we are doing here today, very concretely. with the signature of the EU-Kenya Economic Partnership Agreement.
Sudan's Rapid Support Forces, or RSF, have taken control of Wad Madani, a city that had provided refuge to hundreds of thousands of people fleeing the 8-month war between the regular army and paramilitary forces. Videos posted by the paramilitary force depicted fighters and pickup trucks driving through the streets of Wad Madani. The RSF's advance followed 3 days of intense fighting, prompting thousands of residents to flee the city towards the south. Reports indicated looting by the army, police, some civilians, and more recently, RSF fighters. The conflict, which erupted in April between the two rival forces, has claimed the lives of over 10,000 people and resulted in the displacement of 6 million individuals, constituting the world's largest internal displacement crisis. The United Nations reported that around half of Sudan's population is facing hunger, and over 20 million children have been out of school since the war began.
In Chile, investigative reporters or police officers raid houses, seize weapons and money and luxury cars in connection to what is described as the largest tax fraud in the history of the country. Elise Danielle has more details.
55 businessmen are arrested in Chile on charges of having organized a network to evade taxes worth some $270 million. This, authority says, is the largest tax fraud ever discovered in the country. The organization defrauded the state in recent years through the insurance of false invoices. Chile's Investigations Police Director General Sergio Muñez says a common element of these organizations is the complexity of their structure upheld by crime specialists and crime professionals. He says these are commercial engineers, auditors, accountants, and lawyers. Chilean Interior Minister Undersecretary Manuel Monsalve says 7 clans had 100 companies issue false invoices. Monsalve says there were also companies that turned to this criminal structure to receive the false invoices. These companies then reduced the value, added tax payment, or increased the income of the business owners. Police have raided 90 homes in 10 of the 16 regions of Chile. Elise Danielle for Matanang Agila International, trusted, connected, on point.
Egypt's Abdel Fattah al-Sisi swept to a third term as Egypt's president in an election where he faced no serious challengers, calling the vote a rejection of the inhumane war in neighboring Gaza. The election, in which he took 89.6% of the vote according to the National Election Authority, was held as Egypt struggles with a slow-burning economic crisis and tries to manage the risk of spillover from the war adjacent to Egypt's Sinai Peninsula. Many people in the Arab world's most populous country expressed indifference about the election, saying that the result was a guaranteed conclusion. Some voters said the conflict had encouraged them to vote for Sisi, who has long presented himself as a bulwark of stability in a volatile region. The same argument that proved effective with Gulf and Western allies providing financial support to his government.
Following oil giant BP's announcement to halt its services, the United States decided to spearhead an international naval operation to protect ships along the Red Sea route. The United Kingdom, Canada, France, Bahrain, Italy, Netherlands, Seychelles, Norway, and Spain are set to join Washington's Operation Prosperity Guardian Group. United States Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin says the recent escalation in reckless Houthi attacks originating from Yemen is an international challenge that demands collective action. The Houthis continue to threaten and target all ships heading to Israel, regardless of their nationality. Austin asserts the said attacks also threaten the free flow of commerce, endanger innocent mariners, and violate international law.
The Israeli government is facing more protests from its own citizens as the war with Gaza is in its 10th week. The most visible is in Tel Aviv, where a tent city has been set up outside of the Ministry of Defense headquarters. Thomas I. Likeness has the details.
The demand is simple. These people want the remaining 129 hostages believed to be held in Gaza to be released. The tents have been here since the weekend. The demonstrators have no plans to leave anytime soon. They say they'll remain until all of the hostages are returned. When news broke last Friday about the 3 hostages mistakenly killed by the Israeli military, things began to change. Protests calling for a new hostage deal intensified, and pressure mounted on Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu to strike a new deal with Hamas. People like Ruby Chen. His son is still being held in Gaza. Chen says the government can no longer put off making a deal.
The Israeli government needs to be active. They need to put an offer on the table, including prisoners with blood on their hands, and put the best offer on the table to get the hostages back alive. Alive.
But there's no indication Netanyahu is ready to talk with Hamas. He insists Israel will keep fighting until Hamas's rule in Gaza has ended. Protester Monty Director says that's just not working. He says it's time for Israel to change its strategy.
The only way to release the hostages alive is by negotiation. Not fighting is good, but you can fight after that. You can fight now for 2-3 years, but first release the hostages.
Behind the scenes, the chief of the U.S. Central Intelligence Agency has met with the head of Israel's Mossad and the Prime Minister of Qatar. But word is another deal is not imminent. All of which means the protests in Israel will likely continue, further polarizing a country that had already been showing divisions prior to the October 7th attack. Thomas I. Leiknes for Matanang Agila International. Trusted, connected, on point.
CIA Director William Burns is currently in the EU for talks with Israeli and Qatari officials to feel out the potential for a new hostage deal in Gaza as United States Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin speaks to Israeli military leaders about scaling back major combat operations against Hamas. U.S. officials have repeatedly expressed concern about the large number of civilian deaths in Gaza. After talks with officials on Monday, the U.S. Defense Secretary seemed dejected, vetoing calls for a ceasefire at the United Nations, even sending additional munitions to Israel.
And I'm not here to dictate timelines or terms. Our support to Israel's right to defend itself is ironclad, as you've heard me say a number of times.
Recently, there have been no signs of a shift in Israel's mandate 2 months into the war as fierce battles raged on in the area, where residents said rescue workers were searching for the dead and the living under buildings flattened by Israeli strikes.
La situation que l'on voit sur le terrain est catastrophique, et même plus que catastrophique. Elle est tragique. Une tragédie qui s'abat sur une population civile, une tragédie qui ne peut pas nous laisser indifférents. Et les Palestiniens n'ont pas à payer pour des crimes terroristes qu'ils n'ont pas commis. Et donc vous savez que la France plaide pour qu'une nouvelle trêve humanitaire intervienne le plus vite possible.
Pressure in Israel grew over the weekend as France, the United Kingdom, and Germany joined global calls for a ceasefire, with Israeli protesters demanding that the government relaunch talks with Hamas on the release of more hostages, as 3 of them have been shot down by Israeli troops while waving a white flag. Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has insisted that Israel will keep fighting until it ends Hamas' rule in Gaza, crushes its formidable military capabilities, and frees hostages still held in Gaza. The war has killed more than 19,000 Palestinians and demolished much of the north, turning it into a moonscape, with nearly 85% of Gaza population being permanently displaced from their homes into UN-run shelters and tent camps near the Egyptian border.
כשעדכנו אותי על הטרגדיה הנוראה, זה עלם בי. אלון, סמר ויותם שרדו את התופת במשך 70 יום. הם היו כפסע מהחופש. הם ממש נגעו בגאולה. ודווקא אז קרה האסון. זה שבר לי את הלב, זה שבר לאומה כולה את הלב. וליבנו יוצא למשפחות בשעת יגונן הכבד. עם כל הצער העמוק אני רוצה להבהיר, הלחץ הצבאי הכרחי גם להחזרת החטופים וגם להשגת ניצחון על אויבינו. בלי הלחץ הצבאי לא היינו מצליחים לייצר מתווה שהביא לשחרור של 110 חטופים, ורק המשך הלחץ הצבאי יביא לשחרור כל חטופינו. ההנחיה שאני נותן לצוות המשא ומתן מבוססת על הלחץ הזה, ובלעדיו אין לנו כלום.
Oil giant BP says it will stop all shipments of oil through the Red Sea after Houthis' recent attacks on vessels crossing the region. BP adds it would keep its precautionary pause under ongoing review and monitor the Red Sea ports. Evergreen also temporarily stopped accepting Israeli cargoes with immediate effect. The Taiwanese shipping line instructed its container ships to suspend navigation through the Red Sea until further notice. It also instructed ships traveling on regional routes to Red Sea to proceed to safe waters nearby and await further notification. Its container ships that were scheduled to pass through the area will be diverted around the Cape of Good Hope to continue their voyages to their destination ports. Many freight firms have suspended journeys in the Red Sea as the Houthi attacks continue. Analysts say that if other large oil firms follow suit, oil prices could rise. The Red Sea is one of the world's most important routes for oil and liquefied natural gas shipments, as well as for consumer goods. Japanese steel giant Nippon says it plans to buy U.S. steel in a deal worth nearly $15 billion. Nippon believes the purchase would enhance its long-term growth prospects by expanding its footprint in the United States. Members of the union voiced dismay about the deal, saying they had been excluded from negotiations. But Nippon vows to honor existing contracts with the U.S. Steel Union workers, adding that the company would retain its name, brand, and headquarters in Pittsburgh. Meanwhile, U.S. Steel Chief David Burritt adds that he is confident with the sale, saying Nippon has a proven track record of operating and investing in steel mill facilities globally.
Up next, a volcano erupts on the Reykjanes Peninsula of southwest Iceland. A magnitude 6.2 earthquake rocks northern China, resulting in over 100 casualties. And Apple pulls the Apple Watch 9 and Apple Watch Ultra 2 from market shelves. Please don't go away. We've got more stories when Mata ng Agila International returns.
Ako po si Juliana Katapatan.
College graduate ka.
Nagsinungaling ka.
Hindi po, hindi lang ako nagsasabi ng totoo.
Late ka kaninang umaga. At hindi lang yon ha? It's the third time for this week.
Naalagaan ko po yung lolo kong na-stroke.
Hindi totoong na-stroke ang lolo mo?
Hindi po, patay na po yung dalawang lolo ko. Wala na akong lolo.
Love, Bosleng, and Tali. Tuwing linggo, alas 6 ng gabi dito lang sa Net 25.
Let's net together sa Net 25. Sa Net 25.
Magandang araw, magandang araw. Magandang araw, magandang araw. Magandang araw, magandang araw. Magandang araw, magandang araw. Any time of the day, it's super saya. Lalo na kung si Ara lagi mong kasama. Magandang araw, magandang araw.
Following weeks of intense seismic activity, a volcano has erupted on the Reykjanes Peninsula in southwestern Iceland. The area is about 40 kilometers from the capital of Reykjavik. Carlo Valdez has more.
The volcano began spewing lava at about 10 o'clock Monday evening. Large jets of glowing orange molten rock lit up the night sky. Police are warning people to stay away from the area. Smoke from the volcano is a health hazard. As a precaution, several weeks ago, authorities evacuated the 4,000 residents of the fishing port of Grindavik. At that time, the seismic activity had damaged roads and buildings in the town. Since then, residents have only been allowed to return during certain daylight hours to remove their possessions. Iceland's foreign minister says there is no disruption to flights to and from Iceland. He adds international flight corridors remain open. Volcanic eruptions are not uncommon in Iceland. It is home to 33 active volcano systems, the highest number in Europe. Carlo Valdez for Matanang Agila International, trusted, connected, on point.
Meanwhile, an overnight earthquake killed at least 118 people in a cold and mountainous region in northwestern China. The strong, shallow tremor collapsed buildings in Gansu province and the neighboring province of Qinghai. Arlene Ocampo reports.
China State News Agency says the quake caused significant damage, collapsing houses and sending people running into the streets. In Gansu, 100 people died. The quake killed 11 others in Qinghai. More than 230 people have been injured. Rescue workers raced to the scene to start digging through the rubble. Chinese President Xi Jinping has called for an all-out effort in the search and relief work, as well as ensuring the safety of survivors and their property. The magnitude 6.2 shaker disrupted power and water utilities in some villages. Transportation and communications have been affected as well. Temperatures in northern China have dropped to well below freezing. Arlene Ocampo for Matanang Agila International, trusted, connected, on point.
Russian President Vladimir Putin has offered his condolences to China after a devastating earthquake struck its northwest region. In a statement, Putin said, and I quote, "In Russia, we share the pain of those who lost their loved ones in the disaster and hope for a speedy recovery for all those injured."
Firefighters are battling an out-of-control bushfire in southeastern Australia. The blaze is about 400 kilometers northwest of Sydney in New South Wales. Anna Kui reports.
So far, the fire has consumed more than 130,000 hectares of forest, and Australian authorities warn embers from the blaze are being blown in front of the flames, causing a danger to homes. Residents in local villages near the fire have been told it is too late for them to evacuate. Authorities are telling them to shelter in place and avoid being caught in the open path of the fire. Thunderstorms and lightning continue to aggravate the situation. Smoke can be seen across an area spanning hundreds of kilometers. There are 63 fires burning in New South Wales, 15 of them out of control. More than 450 firefighters are battling the flames. Temperatures in the region are forecast in the mid-30s or higher. Anna Kui from Matanang Agila International, trusted, connected, on point.
At least 14 people have died in an explosion and fire at a fuel depot in the Western African nation of Guinea. The blast early Monday in the capital city of Conakry brought the city to a standstill. EJ Gonzalez has the details.
In some parts of Queensland, crocodiles are swimming around in the flood waters. Here in Ingham, wildlife officers managed to lasso one of the reptiles and remove it from the water.
Back in Australia, flash floods in northeastern Australia have forced hundreds of people from their homes. Stranded residents in an Aboriginal settlement took shelter on a hospital rooftop after floodwaters swamped their homes. Emika Pirita-Roja reports.
In some parts of Queensland, crocodiles are swimming around in the flood waters. Here in Ingham, wildlife officers managed to lasso one of the reptiles and remove it from the water. Authorities warn people to be on the lookout for crocodiles in drains and estuaries. Elsewhere, rescue teams use boats to evacuate more than 300 people. The military has sent helicopters to areas that have been cut off by the floods. Some houses have been completely submerged. People are being told to conserve drinking water as much as they can because the floods have overwhelmed water treatment plants. So far, no deaths or serious injuries have been reported. The rains have taken a toll on livestock and wildlife. Locals use ropes to try and rescue helpless animals swept away by torrents of water. The disaster is expected to cause $1 billion worth of damage. Emi Capilita Roja for Mata ng Agila International, trusted, connected, on point.
A police officer and 9 inmates have died in a deadly operation to transfer a drug trafficker who was part of a prison in Paraguay. The drug trafficker was under the police officer's control area. More than 2,200 police and soldiers took part in the operation at the Cumbu prison in the capital of Asuncion. Jeff Sanidad has more.
The drug trafficker lived in section of the prison known as the Jungle. Paraguayan authorities say he lived in a comfort with his pregnant wife and 3 pit bulls. He also ran a small supermarket. Police Commissioner Nimio Cardozo says prisoners opened fire on the officers, killing one of them with a shot to the head. A second officer remains in hospital in critical condition with a gunshot wound to his temple. Another 36 officers and 24 prisoners suffered gunshot wounds. Police confiscated numbers of weapons during the operation. Security forces handcuffed some 700 inmates and transferred them to other prisons. Tacumbo prison houses double its capacity of 1,500 inmates. Paraguayan President Santiago Pena says for decades, the prison has been a center where criminal gangs operated, planning assaults and distributing narcotics. Jeff Sanidad for Mata ng Agila International. Trusted, connected, on point.
Russian President Vladimir Putin says women are his country's reserve labor force. Putin is urging traditionally male professions to employ more women. Rose Papa Angeles has the details.
President Vladimir Putin says Russia has been suffering from a shrinking labor force for years because of a low birth rate. The situation has worsened as a result of the war with Ukraine. Hundreds of thousands of men have been removed from the job market and conscripted to the military. And many of the most educated sections of the populations have fled the country. Putin praised women who are studying to join the Air Force. He says women are a huge reserve for Russia in sectors where they are not yet working. But the Russian leader, a longtime defender of so-called traditional values, nuanced his comment. He says there are some limitations related to health, anatomy, and maybe to family. Rose Papa Angeles from Mata ng Agila International, trusted, connected, on point.
The European Union, or EU, has formally launched infringement proceedings against Elon Musk's X platform. EU Commissioner Thierry Breton said they have opened legal proceedings on suspicion of breach of obligations to counter illegal content and disinformation. The EU said it identified disinformation related to Hamas's October 7 attack in Israel. Other allegations include suspected breach of transparency obligations and suspected deceptive design of user interface. Based on this information, the EU said X violated some provisions of the Digital Services Act, or DSA. Legal experts say in the event of proven infringements, the DSA carries penalties that can include fines going up to 6% of an online company's global revenues.
After December 24, Apple will no longer sell the Apple Watch Series 9 and Ultra 2 to comply with an ITC import ban. Elijah Villanueva has the data.
Apple is pulling the Apple Watch Series 9 and Ultra 2 from online and physical stores, and these banned watches will no longer be available after December 24th. This is in compliance with an ITC import ban following a patent dispute with medical device maker Masimo over the watch's oxygen saturation sensor. The patent disputes between Apple and Masimo started several years ago. Masimo, a health technology and consumer electronics company based in Irvine, California, is known for its pulse oximeter device. It filed two separate cases, one with the U.S. District Court in California and a second with the ITC, claiming that Apple infringed on its pulse oximeter technology. Right now, reports say that it is uncertain whether the ITC import ban will be permanent as it is currently undergoing a presidential review period, and President Joe Biden will have the opportunity to veto the ban. Meanwhile, Bloomberg reported that Apple is working on modifying the Apple Watch's software to apply changes on how it measures and reports oxygen saturation. Elijah Villanueva for Mata ng Agila International. Trusted, connected, on point.
Coming right up, NASA is sending cat videos from outer space. In esports, AP brand outlasts Onyx Esports to capture the M5 crown. And Marvel snaps Jonathan Majors out of their actor roster. Catch the latest in sports and entertainment. Mata ng Agila International will be back.
Kwentuhang makaka-relate kay you.
Menopause. Meron ka ba nararamdaman ng mga signs ng menopause?
Menopause really happens. In my case, I had a condition called endometriosis.
Miss Corina, ganda po ng hair nyo. Ano pong shampoo nyo?
Mapa-senior man kay you.
My apos are here. They're here with me and they give me such joy. And so, kung hindi ako magtatrabaho, how could I spoil them?
O Gen Z?
Nar is actually an accent from Australia. So like when you say no, you don't say no. They say nar.
Bida kayo dito.
Shumay!
Let's just always choose to be kind.
Kaya ugaliin ang tumutok kung saan masaya at maganda ang simula ng araw. 10 a.m. to 12, Lunes hanggang Biyernes, kada umaga.
NASA said that it had used the state-of-the-art laser communication system on a spaceship to send a high-definition cat video from deep space. The United States Space Agency disclosed that the spacecraft was 19 million miles away from Earth. The video showed a 15-second interaction of an orange tabby named Taters. According to NASA, the video took 101 seconds to send to Earth at a maximum bit rate of 267 megabits per second. This marked the first to be streamed from deep space. NASA explained that the video was transmitted to Earth using a laser transceiver on the Psyche probe traveling to the main asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter. The encoded near-infrared signal was then received by the Hale telescope and sent to NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory in Southern California.
The Philippines brings home the bacon once again in esports as AP Bren wins the M5 World Championships. JD Mahinay has the details.
Mobile Legends Bang Bang's annual World Championships has ended, with Philippines' AP Bren coming out on top. The grand finals of Best of 7 was intense, with AP Bren leading the early 4 matches, securing 3 wins against Onyx. On Game 5, however, Onyx made a comeback as they capitalized in Games 5 and 6, tying the score at 3-all. Going on the last game, AP Bren had a great start, securing 3 turtles and a lord for the early lead. On the second lord spawn, Onyx only had 1 tower remaining with a 7,000 gold deficit with AP Bren. Game 7 was decided after AP Bren plucked 2 heroes from Onyx lineup, making them defenseless on the upcoming minion wave. The MVP in the match was Flap TZ using Khalid, marking the second win in the international competition with his teammate Few. Meanwhile, the upcoming M6 World Tournament is set to be hosted in Malaysia, where it all began. Reporting for Sports, JD Mahinay for Mata ng Agila International. Trusted, connected, on point.
Marvel Studios has axed Jonathan Majors after he was convicted of assaulting his ex-girlfriend Grace Jabari during an altercation in March of this year. A New York jury found Majors guilty of reckless assault in the 3rd degree and harassment in the 2nd degree. Legal experts said Majors could face up to a year in prison. The Emmy-nominated actor was set to continue Kang the Conqueror and his many variants in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. But right after the court's verdict, Marvel Studios said they would no longer work with the actor. Up to this moment, it remains unclear whether Marvel plans to replace Majors with another actor or completely write his character out of the Avengers films.
Celine Dion has lost control of her muscles as she continues to battle stiff person syndrome. Stephanie Mayo has the scoop.
Celine Dion has lost the ability to control her muscles as she continues to battle a rare autoimmune neurological disorder called stiff person syndrome. This was shared by the singer's sister Claudette Dion to 7 Jours. The 55-year-old Canadian Grammy winner was diagnosed last year, which causes her painful muscle spasms and stiffness as the body attacks its own nerve cells. According to Claudette, their sister Linda has been living with Celine in the Las Vegas area as she receives care from doctors who specialize in stiff person syndrome. Just this year, in May, Celine canceled her Courage World Tour because of her illness. Claudette has previously revealed that despite working with the top researchers in the field, Celine has seen little improvement in her health. Stephanie Mayo for Mata ng Agila International, trusted, connected, on point.
And that's a wrap for tonight's news. Catch the latest updates on our social media channels. I am Gianna Llanes.
I am Nina Richie Elago Flores. This is Mata ng Agila International. Trusted, connected, on point. Thank you for choosing Mata ng Agila International as your trusted news source, keeping you connected to the world and on point with stories from around the globe. Follow, like, and subscribe to @Net25 TV.